30 years. For 30 years, one story has had this incredible grip on America. A brutal double murder, a fallen sports hero, and even today, long after his death, the saga of O.J. Simpson still manages to captivate and divide us. So why? What is it about this case that we just can't let go of? Let's get into it.
You know, to really get this story, you have to understand that there were two O.J. Simpsons living in one body. On one side, you had the hero, the icon, the Heisman winner, the record-breaking NFL legend, the charismatic guy you saw in movies. But then, there was the other side, the accused, a man with a history of domestic abuse, the prime suspect in a horrific murder, and eventually a fugitive on the run.
So how did this beloved American icon fall so far, so incredibly fast? Well, it all started with the crime that would change everything. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the night of June 12, 1994. Nicole Brown Simpson is having dinner with her family. Around 10 o'clock, a young waiter named Ron Goldman swings by her condo to drop off a pair of glasses she'd left at the restaurant. Just 15-20 minutes later, neighbors hear a dog barking. They described it as a wailing sound. And by 11 p.m., O.J. Simpson is in a limo heading to the airport. But here's the thing. For those who are paying attention, this story didn't come out of nowhere. Behind that shiny public image of a perfect couple, there was a really dark history of abuse. During one police call all the way back in 1989, a terrified Nicole was recorded screaming, "He's going to kill me, he's going to kill me!" It's just a chilling glimpse into the fear she was living with. And then came the moment that turned this whole thing from a local murder investigation into this bizarre national spectacle. Instead of turning himself in, O.J. fled. An incredible 95 million people. 95 million were glued to their TVs watching this slow-speed chase with a white Ford Bronco on the LA freeway. It wasn't just news anymore. It was the birth of reality television.
So once Simpson was finally in custody, the prosecution started laying out its case. And honestly, on the surface, the evidence against him looked, well, it looked like an open and shut case.
I mean, they had what looked like a mountain of physical evidence. They found O.J.'s blood at the scene of the crime. They found the victim's blood inside his Bronco. They found a bloody glove at his house that matched one at the scene, plus bloody shoe prints that matched his shoe size, and a hat with his hair fibers in it. It all seemed to point directly at one person.
And check this out. At the time, DNA was still pretty new technology in court, but the numbers here were just staggering. The probability that the blood found at the crime scene belonged to anyone besides O.J. Simpson was just 1 in 170 million. Think about those odds.
So that brings us to the biggest question of the whole trial, right? With a mountain of evidence like that, with those kinds of DNA odds, how on earth could the prosecution possibly lose? Well, the answer wasn't really about the evidence itself, it was about who touched it. See, Simpson's lawyers, his so-called dream team, knew they couldn't just deny the evidence, so they came up with this really radical strategy. They stopped defending O.J. and started prosecuting the Los Angeles Police Department.
The defense built this powerful narrative that the LAPD was so sloppy, so corrupt, that you just couldn't trust a single piece of evidence they handled. One of the defense attorneys, Barry Scheck, didn't pull any punches. He called the LAPD's crime lab a cesspool of contamination. Their strategy basically boiled down to 3 key steps. 1. Challenge every single part of how the evidence was collected. 2. Claim that all the sloppy work led to cross-contamination. And 3, and this was the knockout punch, introduce the idea that the evidence wasn't just sloppy, it was planted by a racist cop.
And the key to that whole strategy was Detective Mark Furman. He is the guy who found that bloody glove at O.J.'s house. On the stand, under oath, he swore he hadn't used the N-word in the last 10 years. But then, the defense produced these secret tapes of Furman using that exact slur over and over again. His credibility was just gone.
And this was the moment that really planted that seed of doubt. The defense asked Furman point blank, "Did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?" And instead of saying no, he pleaded the fifth. He refused to answer. The detective who found the most important piece of evidence wouldn't deny that he faked.
And of course, who could forget the glove itself? In what turned out to be a huge mistake for the prosecution, they had O.J. try it on in front of the jury, and it didn't seem to fit. That one moment gave his lead attorney, Johnny Cochran, the line that would define the entire trial, a simple rhyme that summed up their whole case. By the time the trial was wrapping up, it was clear this was about so much more than a double murder. It had become this flashpoint for America's deep, painful history with race and policing.
So after 9 long months of testimony, with the jury locked away from their families for 267 days straight, the end came with breathtaking speed. They went in to deliberate and came back with a verdict in less than 4 hours.
The verdict was not guilty, on all counts. It was a moment that sent an absolute shockwave across the entire country.
And the reaction to that verdict? It was immediate, and it was split right down racial lines. Polls showed that 77% of white Americans thought he was guilty. Meanwhile, 72% of black Americans believed he was innocent. It was like two different Americas had watched the exact same trial and seen two completely different things. So why? Why the huge divide? Well, it's because people were watching the trial through two completely different sets of eyes, based on their own experiences. For a lot of white Americans, it was about the evidence against one man. But for a lot of black Americans, this trial was about the entire justice system, a system that, for generations, they'd seen as biased. Remember, this was right after the Rodney King beating. So when that verdict came down, as one person put it, it felt like for once, just once, the scales of justice tipped the other way.
So, the criminal trial was over. But the O.J. Simpson saga? Oh, it was far from finished. The legal fights, the constant controversy, it would follow him for the rest of his life.
See, there was another trial, a civil trial. And in civil court, the burden of proof is lower. You don't need beyond a reasonable doubt. And this time, a different jury came to a very different conclusion. They found O.J. liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole and Ron and ordered him to pay their families $33.5 million. And Simpson's later years were just filled with more trouble. He ended up getting arrested for a really bizarre armed robbery in Las Vegas in 2007, and for that, he was sentenced to 33 years in prison. He eventually died from cancer in 2024, but even after his death, the story goes on, with new, unproven claims of a confession still popping up.
So, at the end of the day, what are we left with? O.J. Simpson was acquitted in criminal court but held responsible in civil court. He was an American hero who became a total outcast. And here we are, 30 years later, still talking about it. The trial is long over, but those deep, uncomfortable questions it forced us to ask about celebrity, about race, about justice in America, they feel just as urgent today. Which leaves us with that one big question. What does our obsession with this saga really say about us?